I'm Amy Pilborough from the English department, just finished my NQT year. So I've got a top 3 of strategies that I chose from the Twilight that I found really, really useful in delivering my lessons, and it's things that I've been able to use daily throughout the past 2 terms, which has been an absolute godsend. So the first is differentiated tables. When I started here, I thought, right, I need to kick down on behaviour, so I had my regimented lines, and I kept that for the first half term just while behaviour was established. And then we saw Christine Pegram's amazing maths lesson where students were hopping about tables from the classroom, and I thought, I need to get in on this. So I grouped all my students together according to their target grades for the end of the year, or if some were really struggling and were currently level 5 on a level 7, I put them in an appropriate group. And I called my tables different things. So I had explorers, I had analysers, I had evaluators, I had explainers, which worked really, really well. At the start, I started off with differentiated worksheets, which was painful because they took forever, and while they were really effective, I thought this isn't overly sustainable, and how am I ever going to have any sort of work-life balance? And then I embraced the idea of a levelled objective. So, for example, with a Year 7 group, I had Group 1 explaining the meaning of a quotation in detail, Group 2 exploring alternative meanings, and Group 3 analysing how a detail from a quotation makes you think or feel. So we had Level 4, Levels 5 and Level 6, so it's quite clear to the students. And then I thought, how do I keep that going throughout the whole of the lesson? So then with a Year 9 group, similar sort of thing, but when I was demonstrating modelling a paragraph, I had these little criteria along the side of the PowerPoint slides that they could see which was a level 5 part of a paragraph, which was, increasing the challenge and which was increasing it further. So the colours that I have here represented a level 5, a level 6 and a level 7, and the students get to know that blue means a level 5, red means a level 6, so that worked really, really well. On top of that, the second strategy that I really, really like because it's so visual was the traffic light cards in the planners. So as students were working, you could see visibly around the room who was okay, who was finding it really easily and who was really struggling. And what I particularly liked about that was that certain students who were really quiet and a bit shy suddenly felt noticed, and they were saying to me things like, oh, thank you, that was really great that you spotted that I was struggling then, because they don't put their hand up, and whereas before you go around the classroom, kind of see that somebody was struggling and say, are you all right? Oh no, I'm not, and they're having a little personal breakdown over a level 5, when you can see things quicker, so they can make more progress quicker. So certainly at the beginnings of my lessons I do really like that. And obviously for students who were on a green all the time, you're thinking this is way too easy, so I need to challenge them on, which brings me nicely to the third strategy that I looked at, which was teaching a mini lesson. I didn't have a flip chart in my room before, but I borrowed one from a colleague and it has revolutionised my teaching. I use it all the time. It's so simple. So any students who are on a green will bring their books up to me. I can have a quick look to see whether they actually are on a green or not, and they actually are finding it easier. Often they are, they're quite good, they're getting quite good at self-assessing, which is good, and they'll come to the flip chart and we'll move them on, we'll change their paragraphs in some way so they're not just adding more work, we're trying to think sort of quality control while we're up there, and then they'll go back to their tables and do what they do. So while the rest of the group are working in their individual groups and they're cracking on, you're at the front so you can see what everybody's doing and you can check where everybody's on task, but also you're then moving students on so they've got their own personal level of challenge. Another strategy that I use to tie learning together at the end and make sure that I've got certain students, if not all my students, thinking at a higher level to get those abstract ideas, making links within what they've learnt to what they can apply to the outside world. I used analogies, so if you remember Kent had the one likening Hogwarts to the lungs, I likened English skills to a camera, and students had to think, what they'd just done in English, how similar was it to, the functions of a camera, and they came up with some ideas that I couldn't even dream of considering. And then I was speaking to Joe about it, and he said, why don't you get some of the really able to make their own analogies and then share them with the rest of the class? And I know his Year 11 came up with some great things about English skills and panning for gold, etc. So that's worked really well for us within the department.
I'm Caroline Davis, I teach science here. these are the solo hexagons that were used with my Year 10 group. What I did, I printed out some keywords onto each hexagon. I then got the students to write definitions in those hexagons. And the kind of aim of the game was to link the keywords together and then write what that link was. So for instance, we've got decomposers, they break things down, they've linked that to decay because decay is the breaking down of organic material by microorganisms. So it was getting them to think about some of the key terms that they use in their science and getting them to link these ideas together, which I think is a really difficult thing to do at Key Stage 4 particularly. I've used them for other topics as well. They work really well for revision, trying to get these key terms in their writing as well. The hexagons work really well for challenge and differentiation because they try and think about different ways to link things. You'll often get a hexagon left over or something like that, and then they try and think really carefully about where they can fit it in, and it really provokes some rich discussion from the students because they're kind of arguing about where it should go. It should go with this because of this, no, it should go here because of that, and I think the discussion in itself is the kind of challenge there.
Hi, I'm Tony Perry and I'm a D&T teacher. This year in D&T we've tried to encourage our students to improve their levels with their bookends, and I introduced a PowerPoint presentation to the students in the year where I took photos of the different outcomes at different levels. So for example, I took a 6C bookend, a 5A, a 5B, a 5C, etc. in order to try and encourage students to reach a higher level than they'd previously been marked on. The idea was also to show students, to give students a practical example of what the next level, the next sub-level looks like, because that's been really hard to do on paper, and we found that students now have a better understanding of how to access the higher levels. And in D&T, accessing higher levels might be about combining different materials, using different methods of jointing the bookends. Students now have a much better understanding of how to get to the next sub-level.
Hi, my name is Kelly Patterson, I teach maths, and a really good differentiation resource that I have used this year has been coloured folders for differentiated work. So I will introduce a topic at the basic level and start to develop it, and then put up here resources that can be used at each different level. So I'll introduce a topic using an example, and as I'm going through the example I will refer back to the folders and say this part of the example is this sort of level of work and this part might be a higher level. The students will use their planners as I'm going through to decide, well actually I think I understand that bit but not that bit, and they'll turn to red, amber or green. And then when I set them onto some work, they will use whatever colour their planner is on to come and choose from that folder. Just because they've chosen that particular folder doesn't mean they have to stay on that level of work. They might pick it up and think, actually I can't do this, I need to drop down a level, or actually this is really easy, I'll go up a level. And as the year progresses they get more confident to make those decisions and choose the right level for them. I use reusable resources, so I will create a whole set of resources which the students will use for the lesson and then return to the folders, and I will keep them in a labelled file ready for the next time I teach that particular topic, so I don't have to plan all those resources again. And quite often I will just get a worksheet which progresses in difficulty and literally slice it into 3. So rather than all the students have the same worksheet and start at the beginning and not get very far, they start at the part that is most appropriate.